And here we are. What's up, buddy?
What up?
Nothing much. Welcome back to Little Dicey Podcast. My name is Salvatore. This is Matthew. We are your co-hosts here on the Little Dicey Podcast. We usually go live Saturdays, noon Eastern Standard Time. Here we are yet again. Go for about an hour every once in a while if you're new here. Just talk some shit about. Well, actually, recently we've been talking shit about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition classes, and we've been going through each one of them, ranking them appropriately, S through F tier. Of course, S standing for suck, because everyone loves getting and giving a little good suck. And then you can figure out the rest of them. A for, ass blaster 9000, B for booby booba. Yeah, and and the rest.
B for boobs, comma Googling.
True. Yeah. Boobs Googling. Yes. Googling boobs. So good. What's up, Michaela? If you're catching this on YouTube, and this is like sort of the first time you've seen us talk about this kind of thing, welcome. Super cool to have you. We do this live on Twitch, which is what's happening right now. So you can join us live. You can ask us questions in the chat as you'd like. We highly recommend doing that. And then we also have our regular live play Dungeons & Dragons show on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the same Twitch channel, twitch.tv/AlittleDiceyDND. I'm the Dungeon Master there. Matt is one of our premier players. And we have a fucking good-ass time this upcoming Wednesday. However, we will not be continuing on the usual episodic main show. We're going to be doing a one-shot hosted and DM'd by Mr. Matthew right over here as well. I will be gone for the week. I'm heading off to New York City for a little mini business and fun trip as well. So that'll be a good time. And then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming the following week. So getting all that out of the way, today, based on our voters in our Discord from our community of folk that consume our content, we put up a poll, as we usually do every week, to decide on what class we will be talking about this week. And it seems as though the Paladin made it out on top.
The Paladin. Yes, indeed. I'm going to let you lead the way a little bit on Paladin, because, we like to kind of give an initial assessment before we dive in. And I'm not going to lie, my basis for like what a Paladin should be is super limited.
Sure.
Like when I was thinking about it the last couple of days, just not digging into the mechanics or anything, but just thinking about like where have I seen paladins? What is the sort of the inspiration for the paladin class? And I couldn't come up with a lot of examples. Sure. I have like one specifically, but so I'd love to hear kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, why don't you before I jump in on the paladin, why don't you give just a quick little like. A schematic of just kind of like how we are going to be going about ranking them, and what sort of parameters do we specifically use for our system.
Yeah, let's set the table for the people here. So lots of people get on the old YouTube, on the Twitch, talk about power levels, which classes are S tier, which classes are maybe C or D tier, just in terms of pure power. And it's always nice to hear different people's takes on it, but they all end up flushing out pretty much the same, which is that all the spellcasters are on top in a certain order, and then there's like paladin, and then everybody else in some order. And the way that we're approaching it is from a kind of a different angle. So power can come into play, but really what we're ultimately looking at is sort of player satisfaction in a sense. Yeah. Based on having the fantasy that they were hoping to have fulfilled. And so maybe that's because, the mechanics in the class just don't really do what you'd expect that class to do. Or maybe it's that they kind of do them, but the power is so low that they don't do them in a way that's satisfying. And so that's why power level can come into play. But yeah, largely we're just talking about like, hey, if you came in and you said, hey, I just finished playing this video game and there was a fighter in that game, and I just want to be whatever, Geralt of Rivia.
Sure.
I don't know if he's specifically a fighter, but he could be.
He'd be a blood hunter.
Yeah,
technically, but fighter 100%.
Yeah, and then you show up to the game and you're like, oh, I can't.
yeah, exactly.
Because the rules don't really support my fantasy. That's kind of the angle we're coming at.
Yeah, exactly. And coming off of that, specifically with the paladin. Before we do a deep dive, I'll just give you my basis, or I'm I'm pretty familiar with Paladin, mostly because, and this is actually really funny because I've stated this multiple times, and it is true that Warlock is my favorite class. However, I found myself more often than not when, I mean, you know, I'm usually a lifelong dungeon master, so I rarely get to play. But when I do, I always start off thinking that I'm going to make a Paladin just because I love the idea of them. So they're right up there in terms of just the idea of the class and all that kind of stuff, with Warlock for me in particular. However, and mechanically they are very strong. However, I actually, my just off the rip ranking for them, it's actually going to be pretty middle of the line.
Okay.
I am going to give them a C ranking.
It's not even middle. It's like,
yeah, I mean, like B and C to me, like it's like upper C. Like if we had to like give
C
this
plus.
C plus, I would give them. And that's only because I find that when we start to go through them, they have cool features for sure, and they have features that make sense. They have strong features also. However, they suffer from the same thing that like the Bard suffers from, in that, and we've talked about this before, which is why we rank the Bard so low. It's that they just feel like you're flavoring a fighter who can cast some spells, and there's already a subclass for that.
so we're kind of on the same page in the sense that like they don't really have like a strong identity.
It feels like they don't. It's because anybody can pray to a god. Like you can have, like in this game and in literal real life, you don't have to become a clergyman. Like I don't have to go, like if I wanted to convert to Judaism, I would not have to like do a whole bunch of stuff and then have to be a rabbi. Like that's not how it works. Like you just study up a little bit and then you choose to do it, and then you go through some other like stuff, and then you're a practicing Jewish person, and that's great. Same thing with Islam. Like I don't have to become like a Islamic priest. Like you could just choose to do that. And so it's just like I could essentially play a Paladin as an Eldritch Knight. Like if I played an Eldritch Knight and I just sort of RP'd that I prayed to a god or whatever, and that was like my big thing, and you didn't know that I was a fighter the whole time, probably the only time you would ever think that maybe I'm not a Paladin is if you were really paying attention, if I'm like never really casting Smite. But like it's just like that's not enough to make a class.
I was thinking about this on the way here actually, and again, like we don't like study the classes before we do these.
Not yet.
But of course I know that Paladin's Smite. I know some of the core features of every class, and to me, the Eldritch Knight. I was having this exact thought on the way here. The Eldritch Knight, the Paladin, and literally half the clerics. Yeah. Because half the clerics are heavy armor. Yeah. Dudes.
You're basically a Paladin.
Some features that, now granted, you're never going to say like, oh, this, Twilight cleric can compete in like damage and frontlinership. Right. As a Paladin. But bottom line is like, those three things,
maybe at the higher levels when you have, because clerics get access to crazy spells that just do as much damage.
Purely light, right? You're right. But when you're talking about just like flavor, those three things are basically the same in concept. Yeah, they're just mechanically different, and in a sense, look, 5e's been around for what, like five years or something
like that.
5-6 years. As more subclasses come out, there's clearly like both demand from people and also supply from the company. Yeah. That people want to be able to play similar concepts in different ways. Sure. Right. And people want to be able to mix and match things. That's why we have these sort of dip feats, and we have subclasses that feel like kind of like dips. But yeah, I sort of agree with you in that the only difference to me, there's no difference flavor wise between like an Eldritch Knight and like an evil Paladin. Yeah, no, I mean, Paladin. Yeah, it's just that do I want action surge and 3 attacks per round? Yeah. Or do I want smites? Right, or protection? Yeah. And so like, I don't necessarily mind that a player with a given concept has multiple options on which one mechanically they enjoy more. And yet, when we're ranking like, is this like a flavor win? This class, it's just kind of weird. Yeah, like. It's just kind of, it feels like it's sort of just like stuff from a few places. It doesn't really have its own, mechanically it has its own thing. for sure. But flavor-wise, it doesn't really have its own thing.
That's completely true. I mean, even in the sense of mechanically, they're big. Like, I mean, besides Smite, their big sort of, you know, once a day thing that they do, they share that with the cleric. Like, both of those classes get channel divinity, which makes sense. However, I really wish I would have been able to see something like the cleric maybe getting the really powerful channel divinity. Like, they get theirs is once a day, and it's some fucking nuts thing that they can do because they have like this. They have an intimate connection with their deity that paladins don't, right? And that's sort of reflected just with the level of spells that they eventually get,
and because also the spellcasting spellcasting ability score, right?
Yes.
Because to me, because paladins use charisma and not wisdom, that tells me that, like warlocks, their relationship with the god should be transactional.
Yes.
And so, like, in a sense, when I see a paladin, when I think about what a paladin should be in my head, and I think it's hinted by this in the Oaths, where a cleric wants to first and foremost serve their god and then achieve maybe some of their own goals, but primarily achieve the goals of what their god is asking them to do.
Right.
The paladin is basically saying, like, I want vengeance.
Yeah.
And I am asking for a god's blessing to support my goals of vengeance.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, it's essentially making a pact. And so in that sense, it's also kind of dipping into the warlock flavor. And I just think that the warlock flavor is just stronger.
Yeah. Oh, it totally is.
And like, we'll fucking get into this, but like, and then I kind of just think that the warlock's smite is better than the paladin smite. And
yeah, we just in general.
We can get into that later, but like, yeah, so I totally agree. I think it's, and I just think paladins are kind of OP too.
Oh no, yeah, they are. I mean, that's the thing. Like, every time I find myself building one, I get to a point where I'm like, holy fuck, I feel like I could, like, if I did this right, probably in one round I could deal like 100 plus damage at, like, you know, super low level. You know what I mean? That's super gnarly, which I mean, that will always feel good.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't necessarily. That's why, I mean, I could put it in B tier as well. But the biggest thing holding me back from that is that, like we've just said, it's too much of a Frankenstein class where I'm just kind of like, I mean, okay, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like this class is another one of those that suffers from, hey, we have this specific system, and, you know, all right, so what do we want to do for this class? Oh, well, they can smite, they can do these other things. All right, so they'll be a half caster, but they only go up to this. Okay, well, what other features should we give them? Well, they can do spells, so we'll give them a bunch of spells, and then we'll have to take a step back on the features. And it's like, all right, well, but what are you really using your spell slots for? Well, to smite.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about these spells? Well, that's just in case. All right, well, what about the features then? But they have spells. And it's just kind of like, well, every time I've made a paladin, with the exception of, there are a couple subclasses which are very, very good, in my opinion, especially flavor-wise. Like, Oath of Conquest is incredible. Vengeance. So good. Oath of Vengeance, amazing. For sure.
Like, there's no question paladins are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
I think that
Playing a paladins are kind of the antithesis of the type of character I like to play.
I think in a weird way, parties love and probably hate having a paladin in the group at the same time. We're kind of like digressing big time, but
Sure.
But yeah, like, because you know, I don't know much about like Arthurian legend, right? Like,
Sure.
maybe this is trying to support like being able to be like a knight of the round. Like, I don't really know much about that. I did watch that one. There was like a Knights of Camelot animated series in the 90s. That was almost like Care Bears-esque. I think they had like sigils on, well, in the sense that I think they had like sigils on their like shields or something, or on their breastplates.
Got it.
That like then they used their ability and like the symbol would come out.
That's
and, like,
so funny.
But anyway,
I did think that was pretty dope.
Cool.
But yeah, in the end, like, the only example that I personally have of like a paladin that I've seen in a property is in Final Fantasy IV. And I've made a lot of Final Fantasy references in this series. In Final Fantasy IV, the lead character starts as a Dark Knight.
Okay.
And for all intents and purposes, he's a paladin, right? He's a heavy armor, sword and shield,
And then he has some abilities that basically allow him to sacrifice some of his own HP to do like an AoE attack, basically.
Oh, cool.
And like the art for that character looks noticeably like the art for the Eldritch Knight.
Okay.
Right? Which of course is again kind of like, okay, is he an Eldritch Knight? Is he a paladin?
Right.
But like, and then he has this sort of like this sort of wonderful arc of addressing your inner darkness, and he literally fights his dark side without going into like a whole thing. He literally like fights like a almost like an avatar of himself.
Sure.
And the result of that fight after you're successful is you sort of leave your dark sordid past behind, and you become like a paladin.
Cool.
And you gain some healing spells, and your HP goes through the roof, and you're like incredibly good. And and that paladin does have like an ability to cover his allies, so that does have some precedence for some of the abilities that the paladin gets. But yeah, like at the end of the day, if I was like, hey, I really want to play Cecil from Final Fantasy IV, how can I do that? I think I would be just as happy with like I don't know. It's like, it just kind of feels like maybe this should just be like a fighter subclass or a cleric subclass. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
No, I totally feel you. Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump into it. So I've got, shouts out to D&D Beyond, sponsor us, that'd be great. I've got the Paladin class pulled up, and we're just going to sort of go through most of the things that they write down here. We're going to take a look at some of the flavor stuff that that Wizards of the Coast would, they write for these source books and for these classes, just to sort of suggest the type of character that you might want to write or whatever when you're creating this, when you're creating a paladin specifically. And then we're going to go through the features to see like, all right, well, you've said this about this class. Let's see if the mechanics of this class and the flavor of this class actually hold up to what we're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? So that being said, they have this sort of paragraph that they title "The Cause of Righteousness," which I think is pretty fucking cool. It says, "A paladin swears to uphold justice and righteousness, to stand with the good things of the world against the encroaching darkness, and to hunt the forces of evil wherever they lurk. Different paladins focus on various aspects of the cause of righteousness, but all are bound by the oaths that grant them power to do their sacred work." So right away we know that the oath itself is the thing that gives them the power. The oath with the deity itself gives them the power, which is different entirely from clerics.
Yes, much closer to warlocks.
Very, very similar to warlocks.
The oath versus the pact.
It's basically the same thing. Yeah.
And also what's interesting here is all paladins, regardless of what their oath is, feel that is the path of righteousness.
Yes, your path as a paladin, whatever the outside world believes against it, you believe that what you're doing is good and righteous.
Yeah.
Right.
So just like maybe a dark god who's the god of vengeance feels like vengeance is
justified.
Is not only justified, but like a world in which vengeance is celebrated is a better world.
Yes,
right?
That's what your idea. That's what your ideology should be.
If you're playing a paladin, and we're not here to tell you like how to play a character, but like if you're playing a paladin who's just like, I hate my ex-wife's new husband or whatever.
Shouts out to Garrett.
I accidentally just threw Garrett under the bus. I didn't mean
good.
to. And that's totally fine. But like this is a character that doesn't necessarily have a specific vendetta, but actually believes in the power of vengeance. And that's pretty interesting. I don't think a lot of people play paladins that way.
I don't think they do either.
And I really like that because there's a lot of precedent, especially with villains. And of course, good paladins are much simpler and obvious. But there's a lot of precedent with some of the best villains that have ever been written have been villains that aren't necessarily selfish, but villains that feel that remaking the world in a given way that at first maybe feels bad. Whether it's like Thanos, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's your sort of utilitarian villains that feel like oppressive order is something that is true and good.
There's a really good example in Naruto with Madara Uchiha, who's like one of the last like evil people in the series or whatever, and his whole goal is that he's this super powerful ninja, and he like learned how to if he can get a certain power, he can reflect basically a spell from the moon, and then use the spell on every living person, and then basically put them in a state of like limbo where he's the only one with autonomy, but he's like, I fought through war like so many times, like all I want is peace.
Yeah.
So I will have to do that, and because I'm the only one who can do this with my power, I will be the only one with actual choice, but I will make it peaceful for everybody and all that stuff. And
exactly.
then everyone's like, hey, we want free choice. We don't trust you. And he's like, I will beat the fuck out of you.
Alleviating the burden of choice,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
You know, I could see a villain who's like, I want to take hope away from everyone.
Yeah.
Because hope is a source of disappointment, and I just want you guys to settle in.
Yeah, everybody's just got to buckle down.
So anyway, not to call out anyone specific, because I think most people play paladins that way.
Yeah.
But it would be cool to see more paladins that play it in the way that we just talked about.
Yes. It continues, paladins train for years to learn the skills of combat, mastering a variety of weapons and armor. So that's very easily reflected. Even so, their martial skills are secondary to the magical power they wield. So here's this is a fucking big sentence, because if we go through this shit and I see that their magical powers are actually really not that good, and it's probably better that you just hit something and then put a smite on it, that's a fucking problem.
Which, spoiler alert, that's what
the case.
you will see.
That is the case.
It's
so annoying.
It's a truly weird sentence, because really, to me, then the paladin should just be any one of the armored clerics.
1,000%. That's just a heavy armor cleric.
And so I think what they're probably really trying to say here is that paladins are not as good with a sword as a fighter is,
right,
or with an axe as a barbarian is. However, when they hit you, the smite is effectively the magic power that they're talking about. Yeah. That's the only way I can even rationalize that, because otherwise it just blows the whole thing.
Which makes sense to a point, but also like that totally depends on the subclass of fighter that you are, right? Like if you're not a battle master fighter, you're doing the exact same mechanical things that a fighter is doing. Like it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So you're just a fighter who can smite things, and it's the same thing as if you're a champion fighter. Oh, you just have a better chance to get lucky. That's what a champion fighter is. That's the only mechanical difference. And then obviously you can hit more, but at level 5 you still get 2 to hit.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. So
by the way, Mika says I miss Dad.
Oh, shouts out. Yo.
Shouts out. You know what? Nobody didn't like Dad.
Everybody loved Dad, I think.
Dad was cool.
Dad was fucking awesome.
Dad. I don't mean to be out here throwing shade.
No, we're not throwing shade. It's just the idea of well, that's the thing, is that Wizards of the Coast should be writing in, because that's a good idea, and I don't think a lot of people I think people don't play it like this, because the mechanics of, and what we're going to get into this, do not really support the sort of broad stroke thing of saying like, hey, you really actually should be, in accordance with this, you really should be like playing this like you have this path that you want the world to follow, because you believe that to be true. But this doesn't really support that. It just is like, well, you have a little bit of power, you can swing a sword pretty good, and you hit really hard with that. So like, what thing should I be like crusading for other than like a specific thing? You know what I mean? Like that's what it supports.
I think this probably suffers. There are certain things in D&D that have largely been dropped or diminished for the purposes of allowing people to play whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And I think that there's obvious benefits to that, but I have long been a sort of a naysayer of that.
Yes.
You know, if you want to play, I know that there's people that want to play Goliath artificers.
Yeah.
Right? I know people want to play giant dudes tinkering with tiny toys.
Yes.
Because it's fun. And
and that's cute and
that's
awesome.
totally cool. But you know what? Goliaths have +2 strength. I just don't think you should be able to make your Goliath swap your strength for intelligence. I just don't.
Yeah.
You can put your highest dice roll in intelligence. You can do point buy to increase intelligence the most. But to me, just being able to be like, well, but if you won't let me do that, then I can't play a Goliath Tinkerer. Well, that's not true. You can still play one.
Still totally do it.
There's a reason that the world ain't full of giant dudes tinkering with tiny toys, because they got giant fucking hands.
They can't hold the small things.
Muscles.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's a little bit of a digression over a pet peeve. But and by the way, the optimizer in me loves that I can do that. But flavor-wise, I hate it.
Right.
But I think this might be one of those things, similarly even to alignment, where like Wizards just says like, hey, we're not going to tell you how to play your character. You do whatever the fuck you want. And yet at the same time, like, I've never seen a paladin take their oath seriously. And paladins even have, I remember seeing in the past, like when you take your oath, it's got like rules for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think there's any clear, like, oh, if you break your oath, you lose your powers or anything like that. Similarly, like, there's no rules for that with warlocks either.
I will actually. There are no rules written.
I know Matt Mercer did that.
Yeah. In my opinion, probably besides the ending of campaign 2, probably my favorite like moment from that series, because it's so, number one, it's because it's Travis fucking Willingham, which is great. But goddamn, like there was actually like there was a huge consequence to that. He literally was like, you can't do anything now.
Yeah. I mean, again, like you're not to diverge into warlocks, but like you're making a pact.
Yeah.
If you break your end of the pact, I do think you should lose something.
You have to
be some consequences,
or
you start every day with a point of exhaustion because you're using so much of your energy to will yourself to break the pact, whatever. But yeah, in the case of these paladins, like I think if the rules said these are the rules of your oath, if you break any of these fucking rules, you can't smite anymore, or whatever. Then people would be like, oh, the oath is central to my character. When I'm playing a paladin, I'm not playing a paladin because I want to do big Nova damage. Like there are restrictions that come with it, and I think some of that gets lost when we allow too much freedom to just do whatever.
Yeah, and I think I do know off the top of my head that there are optional rule sets, I think, that are sort of alluded to in the player's handbook for Oathbreaker Paladins.
Yeah.
However, the thing is that
Oathbreaker Paladins are also good.
That's right. I was literally about to be like, you could just be an Oathbreaker Paladin and you're fine.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. And you're great. And you feel like you're destroying
And that could also be really dope, right? Like if you're playing, let's say you're playing an Oath of Redemption Paladin, right? And you're struggling for I'm just like, again, the first thing that popped into my mind is like, and I don't even really know what Oath of Redemption is supposed to be written down here, but let's just say you're like tackling your own inner demons, right? You have an addiction or you have something, and you're struggling and struggling and struggling. It could be really powerful to 5-6 levels in, fall off the wagon and become an Oathbreaker, and then have to find your way back to becoming a redemption paladin. I've literally never heard of that happening in a campaign.
No.
And it's too bad.
Yeah,
that would be really fucking cool.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Let's get into the
this might be a weird case where actually the features are well written, but people just don't fucking do them.
No, actually, you know what? That might be the case, which is actually really funny. And in that case, we would have to bump it up.
Yeah,
because that's not the fucking that's not the book's fault. That's just people playing these classes differently. And the only the only examples we have are just people not playing the class the way it's written, which is hilarious.
So far, I think that's the case.
I think so too. So. As we know, this is a half-caster martial class. They get proficiency in all armor and shields. They have proficiency in simple and martial weapons, right? So that's exact same thing as a fighter. Great. They have 0 tool proficiencies, which again, we've sort of talked about this. It's like, I don't really understand.
Yeah. I've kind of softened on that just because like you can get them from your backgrounds. It's fine.
Now, here's the thing where I find this a little bit interesting. I don't know if you can read. Can you read from here?
No, but
okay. One of them's obvious. Guess what the saving throws are?
So charisma, I'm assuming.
Right, because that's your spellcasting ability.
I would guess Constitution.
Wisdom.
Charisma and wisdom.
Your saving throws are charisma and wisdom, which
that is interesting.
I also find very interesting. I feel as though, especially based on the later class features that you get, like being immune to disease, being like immune to like a handful of things or whatever, I really think that Constitution probably should actually be your secondary saving throw. I kind of understand wisdom because you're sharing this sort of space with the cleric and their saving throw is wisdom.
Yeah.
However, you can play a paladin and dump the fuck out of your wisdom and nothing changes.
Well, other than then somebody can just cause frightened or whatever. You know what I mean? Then you're really susceptible. Like, in a lot of ways, wisdom is the scariest thing to dump. And that's been something that
wisdom and just mechanically in the game is but when I mean mechanically as a paladin, you could dump wisdom. You cannot dump strength or Constitution. You're gonna get like that's you can't do that.
Yeah, the saving throw stuff is always interesting, and I think it's probably one of the harder things to balance in terms of like power level balancing. Sometimes when I read a class, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Like druids. So obviously wisdom. Do you know what the other one is?
I would probably guess dexterity.
Intelligence.
Oh, is it really intelligence?
Yeah.
That blows
Which
my
I
mind.
thought was really interesting. Now, nature is the intelligence skill.
Yep.
But yeah, a lot of times when I read a class, I'm surprised, and I wonder if sometimes it's like, well, charisma comes up as a saving throw more than intelligence, but probably less than strength or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if that's one of the sliders that they're using.
Maybe.
But yeah, I would be interested to hear like how they justify each one. It'd be kind of cool. I would love to just sit in a room with Jeremy Crawford for like 8 hours
And be like, explain why you're balancing this. Yeah. I would love that.
But yeah, wisdom is interesting. I also sort of think that like inherently, like I think I saw Monty from Dungeon Dude say this about warlocks, is he felt that like flavor wise, warlocks, even though it's not a good idea, should always dump wisdom, because making any pact with the otherworldly being,
you're not going to be a wise. Is inherently
an unwise thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think an oath is essentially a pact. You know, you're saying like, I'm devoting my life to this one focus. I'm not going to fucking think about it. I'm going to have no self-reflection.
Yep.
This is my driving goal. And like in a way, like that is an incredibly unwise thing to do.
Yeah, it's like,
and so
what?
in that sense, I would kind of maybe like to see, you know, maybe, I mean, so you can't give charisma and strength because they're 2 weak saves.
Right.
But yeah, maybe charisma and con.
I think Constitution's a fine saving throw for this class. Especially like I said, because you get essentially health buffs like as you level. Like you just become like so infused and blessed by your god that you just like, for whatever reason, you're immune to disease, man. Like you just that's Constitution.
Right.
Any saving throw that I would impose as a dungeon master, whether it be poison or a disease like that, would affect your Constitution.
100%.
I would have you make a con save. So I don't know. So skills.
I'm glad we talked about that though, because we don't normally touch on saves and things like hit die.
Yeah.
And
hit die is D10, by the way, which makes total sense.
Makes total sense. Yeah, and I do think those are you know, nice to touch on.
I think so. I think not enough people take into account that those type of seemingly very small like things about their class, but that actually informs a lot.
And spellcasting ability, like again, charisma tells you so much.
Yep.
He is not working for the god and invoking the god's powers. The god, he is swore an oath that a god decided to sponsor. Basically,
based on how.
He's like, yo, HelloFresh.
Yeah.
I'm swearing the oath of six-pack abs.
That's right, baby.
And HelloFresh is like, damn, bro, let me bless that.
I
shit.
have to give you it. Yeah.
And so the paladin's working for himself. Don't get it twisted.
So true. Very true.
And so like when I'm seeing paladins in game, I don't necessarily want them to be like if they ever feel like the goals of their oath conflict with the goals of their god, they need to be following the oath.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
For sure. Skills, you get 2, like normal, from athletics, makes sense, insight, intimidation, which makes sense to me. Insight kind of does, but also I'm like, sure, whatever. I think that's mostly probably from the wisdom saving throw thing. Like whatever.
That's just, they're trying to link it to clerics.
Medicine, which that makes sense, especially because there are oaths available to, focus that way. Persuasion, which makes sense to me for sure. And religion, of course. Yeah, it makes total sense. So all those make sense to me. Equipment, I believe this is the exact same as fighter. A martial weapon and a shield, or 2 martial weapons. Sure. 5 javelins or any simple melee weapon. A priest pack, obviously this is different now, but a priest pack or an explorer's pack. And then you get chainmail and a holy symbol. Sure. So that's basically the same thing, except you get a holy symbol, or you can do a priest pack if you want.
Paladins specifically get the cool ability, and I'm sure this will come up, but I'm just gonna say it now. They're the only ones that like give a fuck about these like symbols. Yeah, like they can fix their holy symbol to their shield and use their shield as a spellcasting focus. Yeah, that's cool as hell, and it made me mad when I was a warlock that I couldn't do that.
Yeah, you have to take a warcaster, not to affix the thing, but to be able to cast with a shield, right?
Yeah.
Because automatically as a paladin,
the end result is kind of the same. It's just like I was just like, why can't anyone do that?
I know. I don't know.
Like literally, if I can just fucking
Put it on
glue
there.
to the shield and be like, just look at this shit.
Yeah.
Why can't anybody do that?
Yeah, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. So
Especially because I don't think, especially as we're reading this, like these are transactional relationships.
Yeah,
like you
it's the
present that
same
holy
thing.
symbol and you're like, you're not like, daddy.
Yeah.
Like a cleric might be. You're just like, hey, this is basically my police badge.
It totally is.
It's
Yeah,
basically what it is, right?
For sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yep. I'm right there with you,
I'm
man.
not super mad about it, but like, yeah.
But it's just kind of like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. So here are some of the feats that you get at level 1. And by some, I mean here are the 2 feats that you get at level 1. Let me see, when do you get Smite? I think it's... Yeah, you get Divine Smite at level 2. Yeah. So at level 1, you get Divine Sense. The presence of strong evil registers on your senses like a noxious odor. And powerful good rings like heavenly music in your ears. I love this feat. I think it's wonderful. Yeah. This is great. So as an action, you can open your awareness to detect such forces. Until the end of your next turn, you know the location of any celestial fiend or undead within 60 feet of you that is not behind total cover. I do kind of wish that it wasn't the case that it's not behind total cover, only because
It's so weird.
it's just odd. It's just
there's
like
a demon in the next room, and you can't figure that out. You're a lawful good paladin, and you can't sense him. That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think is this trying to prevent? No, because it would just say unseen. I was going to say like invisible. I still think you should be able to sense them.
So I think that the whole purpose of Divine Sense is that you can detect invisible enemies, or like maybe, well, no, because they're behind total cover. So technically, so like those times where you guys might be in a cemetery or whatever, like, you know, in the first arc of our show, if any of you would have been paladins and you're like, oh, I want to use my Divine Sense, those undead folk that were turned undead because of the whole situation that was going on, you wouldn't have been able to sense them because they're behind total cover. They're underground, which is dumb. Like the whole point of it, I understand, is to be able to sense invisible like ghosts and shit or whatever, or like an invisible angel, I guess. I don't fucking know. As a DM you would do that, I guess, but sure. But like, it would be just super fucking cool if you just like took your fucking sword, like put it like the tip of it on the ground, like close your eyes, open them up, and then you could just sort of like you fucking know if the ground is, you know, super fucked up or something.
Or imagine you're in the inn at the end of the night and you're talking with your party in one of the rooms and you're kind of having that conversation, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you sense something in the next room. Yeah. You know, I mean, it just seems kind of weird. Yeah, it's probably just because it's level 1 and they don't want it to be quote unquote too good, but.
But that's so niche. You're not detecting anything. You're 100%. Detecting, like, if I was a DM and you're a paladin and you can still detect whatever behind walls, if I just never put you in front of a fucking zombie like that, then you're never gonna. That's never gonna come up. You know what I mean?
I think in general, Wizards is too stingy with the power level of non-combat things. Yeah. And probably too free with the power level of combat things.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Paladins are so incredibly powerful. Like, make smites a little worse and let them sense things through walls.
Yeah, man. I mean? It's exactly.
I would also say, and I know that they can't do this because you don't have your subclass yet, but I'd love at like level 3 or some point you got like improved divine sense. I don't think you do, but maybe I'll be wrong. Where like, because this is basically assuming that your oath is related to good and evil, which it isn't always. Right. So it'd be really cool. Like, I would probably just homebrew this, that like, let's say you're an oath of I don't know, you're an oath of vengeance, and you can just sense like a presence that's just like overwhelmingly forgiving or something. Like anything that's the antithesis of your oath. Anything that's the antithesis of your oath, it gets added to the list of things that you can sense.
Is this the Holy Spirit?
Yeah.
Get this shit out of here.
Right. Or I mean, I don't know.
That's fucking hilarious.
Because ultimately, like,
is this my grandmother who thinks I can do no wrong? Get her out of here.
If my oath ultimately has nothing to do with taking down the forces of good or evil, then the divine sense is kind of like a flavor, like nothing. Yeah. Like, why would I give a shit if there's a devil next door or an angel next door? So, and not to say that you need to take that away, but I think it'd just be cool. I'd probably just homebrew that.
Yeah, I think that's a fine thing to homebrew. That's awesome.
Wouldn't that be fucking funny?
That'd be hilarious.
Dad, suddenly out of nowhere, you sense... you sense your fucking neighbor. You sense what's his name? Ned from Simpsons.
Yes.
It's like, well, yeah, the good Lord says to
and you're like, I hate this guy. Holy fuck, that's hilarious.
Also, this is an action, right?
This is an action. Yeah, man.
I hate
it's a
abilities
whole ass
like
action,
this.
brother.
I hate abilities like this, not because of action economy, but because if I'm a paladin, I'm not going to use this that much because I don't want to every 2 seconds be like, Sal, use Divine Sense.
Yeah.
Like, just make this passive.
Yeah, just like you can sense this, or you pretty much all like. I would word this to where it's in connection with your passive perception.
Yes, exactly.
And then as a maybe like once a day you can like flare that up or something like that,
Sure.
to where it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's
that's cool.
like nothing matters
Yeah.
whether if they're hidden or anything like that. It's just if your passive
probing
perception,
deeper, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
which would then give you more incentive to put higher wisdom in, and would also make sense with your fucking wisdom save.
Yeah.
Because like if you're really trying to like be aware of all this shit happening or whatever, that makes total sense to me.
Because this is like guidance, but worse. I don't want to every 2 seconds just be like, or just be like, hey, Sal, for all intents and purposes,
I'm always
every
sensing.
6 seconds when I'm walking around, I'm using Divine Sense.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then you're saying like, oh yeah, there was an angel right in front of you the whole time, but you forgot to use Divine Sense. Like, I don't know. I just think this
is a limited feature.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Ugh.
But also, why? I don't.
Why?
It's a feature that you can use a number of times equal to 1 plus your charisma modifier, and then you get it back on long rest.
So, and I know we haven't talked about lay on hands yet, and we probably need to move this along a little bit. But I'll just say that
I have so many problems.
imagine that you're a level 1 paladin, right? Your only feature is Divine Sense and lay on hands, so you get a little bit of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, your whole deal is that you fucking hate angels.
Yes.
And you went to the graveyard and you were like, I wonder if there's one here. I use it. Nope, nobody in the graveyard. And then you're like, okay, I go to the church. Maybe there's one here. Nope, nothing in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just like one in your bedroom,
Yeah.
but you didn't realize
Yep.
it. I don't know. I
don't know. It's whack. Yeah.
There's got to be a way to just make this just work.
Yeah. The idea of Divine Sense is very cool. The execution of it is just not good.
Yeah.
It's annoying. Lay on hands. This is fun, and it's a very unique thing. There's nothing like this in the rest of the game that I can tell, where you just have a completely separate pool of a resource that you can just sort of dump in for healing. Yeah. Right? It's awesome. Lay on hands. Your blessed touch can heal wounds. You have and this is, you don't cast anything. You just have this,
Yeah.
right? So you have a pool of healing power that replenishes when you take a long rest. With that pool, you can restore a number of hit points equal to your paladin level times 5. That's awesome. That's cool. As an action, you can which it should be an action, because this is a full-on essential, like, no spell slot heal, which is great. You can touch a creature and draw power from the pool to restore a number of hit points to that creature up to the maximum amount remaining in your pool.
This ability is incredible.
It's awesome. It's so good.
It's really flavorful, and like, even if you're not a holy man, a holy paladin of any kind, you can still flavor this as just like rejuvenating someone through the power of your conviction.
Yeah.
Right? So I have no problem with the flavor on sort of maybe a not good paladin. And this has all the benefits of like a good berry, where you have all these like 1 HP heals that you can just use to bring people up.
Yeah.
But the flexibility to just dump all of it if you need.
Yeah.
If you really want to give someone
awesome.
20 hit points or something. Yeah, this is great.
It's so cool. Alternatively, and it's malleable, which is great.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you can spend 5 hit points from your pool, which at level 1, you're only getting 5. But hey, at level 1, you can completely cure someone of a disease or neutralize 1 poison affecting it. You can cure multiple diseases and neutralize multiple poisons with a single use of lay on hands, expending hit points separately for each one. Right? So,
great, yeah.
like if they have, like, for whatever reason, my homie's got 3 poisons going on all at once, 15 hit points, they're good, which is great.
Now, is
That's
it a
awesome.
disease or a condition?
It says multiple diseases and neutralize multiple poisons. I would, as a DM, I don't know if this necessarily specifically means you can remove the poison condition.
Yeah.
I would totally rule that should be the case. That it makes 0 sense to me that I shouldn't be able to lay on hand someone and remove the poison condition, especially because there is a literal spell that like does that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's kind of I know there's a couple features of Paladin that have to do with like removing curses and diseases specifically.
Yeah.
I've never actually heard of someone getting a disease in D&D. I know it's a thing.
I've never used that before.
And you know what?
I might give you a disease.
If you got a paladin in your party, just fucking give somebody a disease.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
For sure. Give them something to do.
Give somebody herpes after they go to the brothel.
Yeah, you
the
have
paladin
to.
cure it.
Of course.
Can you imagine if there's real world paladins? Like, they would just be at Planned Parenthood all day.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd, absolutely.
Whatever. Right?
Dude, for sure. Yes. The disease of a
paladin working
child.
at the
Yeah.
free clinic. You
Yes.
just come in with that antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea. It's like, I need the paladin. Call
Get the paladin in
Call
here.
in Sal.
I'm fucking right. I just slap a motherfucker. There you go, buddy.
The
You're all
trick is that
set.
you have to touch the sores directly.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, that was gross.
No,
Anyway,
that was very solid. The feature has no effect on undead constructs. Sure. Makes sense. Level 2, you get your fighting style. Makes sense. You're a martial class. Whatever. Great.
Yeah.
Fighting
Although
styles.
again, like you specifically said that paladins are not as good at fighting as fighters, and yet you gave them a fighting style. So so far I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
you sure?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You also get spellcasting at level 2.
Sure.
Which is interesting to me that you have to. Which it's half-caster. I get it. Whatever. But like, I don't know. Something about it. I'm like, couldn't give him like a spell or two at level 1. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a base spell that you just based on. I don't know. Like just because you're a paladin, you probably like automatically should know. Like maybe a specific cantrip you can give them too.
The timing of features is kind of weird sometimes.
I know all half casters and third casters start with no spell slots.
But yeah, I mean, like
I don't know,
why a barbarian gets rage at level 1, but like a bard doesn't get bard song until level 2 or whatever, or a bardic inspiration
Bardic
until level 2.
Inspiration,
Like
yeah.
I don't,
Yeah. Anyway, so spellcasting.
What's up,
just
Veers?
like everything else.
Welcome.
Veers, what up? And then you get Divine Smite at level 2, right? So which goes hand in hand with your spellcasting. Listen, Divine Smite, awesome. I'll just read it for you to show you how powerful it is. Starting at level 2, when you hit a creature with a melee weapon, you can expend 1 spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target in addition to the weapon's damage. The extra damage is 2d8, which is awesome. Plus 2d8 for a first level spell slot, plus 1d8 for each spell level higher than first, to a maximum of 5d8 because you only go up to 4 fourth level
basically
spells.
1d8 plus 1d8 for each level of spell,
2d8 plus 1d8 for each spell.
but not counting level 1. I just
Correct.
find it
Oh,
easier to be
yes,
like,
yes,
it's
yes.
a
Sorry,
fifth level
sorry.
spell.
Yes.
So it's 4 plus 1.
Yes,
It's just easier for me.
that makes total sense. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and by the way,
didn't think
that's
so-
the way
yeah,
that they
sure.
word Eldritch Smite. So they at some point they were like, yeah, this is dumb. Let's word it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. The damage increases by 1d8 if the target is an undead or a fiend to a maximum of 6d8.
Yeah.
So cool.
Extra bonus to undead.
That's amazing.
There's
and
some
you can choose to do that at like you don't have to. So this is different from, because this affects your damage and not your to hit. You can choose to say this after you know that you've hit.
Yes.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And there's obviously some legacy inspiration for paladins that I don't know of. That's like heavily aligned with undead because they get turn undead and they get this.
I would if someone's playing a paladin
That has nothing to do with undead. I would probably just reflavor those to like almost like a favored foe, like a ranger thing.
Yeah.
Where like if you're like specifically like, hey, I'm a paladin and my oath is related to like order and I fucking hate these trickster fae.
Yeah.
Like it gets 1d8 if you hit a fae, or you can turn fae or whatever.
Sure.
I know, but
No, actually, I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think I think that's really
because
cool.
it is kind of weird in a sense as more subclasses have come out that just have nothing to do with like, being this holy presence.
Yeah.
It's a
Oath
little
of the Open Sea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah. And by the way, when Pike Trickfoot came out in the new animated
Legends.
series, and she shows up. Spoilers, but it's been out for a while. And she shows up against a sea of undead. She basically turns undead. Which
It's awesome.
can clerics turn undead?
Yep.
They can. Okay.
That was one of the biggest moments in campaign 1.
Yeah.
Because she showed up and finally they were able to get like Ashley like via Zoom or
Both
whatever the
clerics
fuck.
and paladins can only turn undead, or can paladins not turn undead?
You can use your channel divinity to turn undead.
Okay, so they just both get it. That's cool.
Yeah. That's sort of like the universal channel divinity, and then you get a second one that is specific to your cause, I think, which is super cool. Or actually, maybe hold on. No, maybe you can't turn undead as a paladin. I think
Okay.
no, I take that back. You cannot turn undead as a paladin with your channel divinity.
Okay, so that was my
Cleric is you universally can turn on undead, and then you get another one. But paladin, you get 2.
Beard says they've been listening while they're cleaning. They have a paladin that they've only played in 1 session so far, so this is a fun listen with him in mind.
Oh, nice.
Yo, you're gonna crush everything.
Oh, you're gonna feel so fucking powerful. It's awesome. It's great. That's the best part of the class. In addition to all that, at 3rd level, you get your Sacred Oath, which is the most important part of your class. Which we've had conversations about this. I don't really understand why you get this at 3rd level, why you wouldn't be choosing this probably right away or something.
This is the,
very weird.
The example of this that makes the least sense in the entire game.
Yeah.
How can you be a paladin at all if you haven't sworn an oath, if your power comes from your oath?
It doesn't make any sense at all.
What are you doing for 2 levels? And
that's the thing. It says when you reach the 3rd level, you swear the oath that binds you as a paladin forever. Up to this time, you've been in a preparatory stage, committed to the path, but not yet sworn to it. Where the fuck is this power coming from then?
Right. And why would a god endorse you? Why would some otherworldly being endorse you if you're just sort of like dabbling? So basically, you have 2 levels. You have 2 levels as an unpaid intern.
Yeah.
And
yeah. No, 2 levels is a really well paid intern. Because you get a fuckload of shit, dude.
You can smite. You can lay on hands. Yeah. Why?
Dude, I don't know.
Makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, sense. Whatever. And then you also get divine health.
How do you even RP your paladin?
I don't know.
Until level 3 if you don't know what the. So what this is saying is you actually have
just walking. I got a bunch of stuff here, but I don't know what to do. You're just fucking, and then you hit level 3, and you're like, I am the hand of God, and it's just like, gee, what the fuck happened here?
So what Wizards is telling you here is, if you start at level 1, you actually have to make your 3rd level choice. You have to read ahead, and make your 3rd level choice. Because you have to be interning in that choice for 2 levels.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I don't understand why they wouldn't just give this at level 1.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Very odd. You're immune to disease, by the way, too.
I think no marshals get their subclasses at level 1, and I think they just want like all of the half casters get them at level 3, and I think they just want consistency. But I think this is such a flavor problem.
Need consistency.
That it doesn't matter.
No, you don't know. You should be focused on the class at hand, not on consistency throughout them. Like just balance them all in terms of mechanics, and then
precedent. Like, hey, you want to compare these to the cleric? Clerics get it at level 1.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
Divine health. The divine magic flowing through you makes you immune to disease. Cool, man.
So you can fuck for free, baby.
That's right, baby. That's right.
It's like the 60s out here.
It's like the 60s. Oh man. And then oath spells, which is
I just want to play an Oath of Free Love Paladin.
Oath of Free Love Paladin actually sounds fucking awesome. And I would pair that with the Oath of the Open Sea. I would just straight up be like, I'm out here fucking, baby.
Out here with
That's right.
Riding them waves.
That's right. In more ways than one.
Yeah. You just walk into like the captain's quarters instead of waterbed.
Dude, that's so fucking funny. We're gonna kind of start moving through this a little quicker because we do have to wrap this up relatively quickly. I wouldn't actually mind
to be in charge of the cutoff time.
Okay, word. I wouldn't actually mind returning to this a little bit later. But anyways, I mean, I have already come to the conclusion because I know the stuff that's going to be coming up next. Because I can move on pretty much to. They give you specific spells that have to do with your oath.
Sure.
Those are cool. Again, like I said earlier, kind of wish that you would have gotten maybe one spell, like, I don't know, do a different bit of consistency, like break the consistency thing, give the paladins their oath at level 1, give them their oath spells at level 1, but like, you don't need, again, if you have a completely separate healing pool for lay on hands, you don't need to use the spell slot system for them. You can just figure out a way like, all right, well, you're gonna have your lay on hands, you have your divine smite, and then you have these 6 spells based on your oath, or whatever. You know what I mean? Because anytime you're casting as a paladin, and Veerds, maybe you can attest to this, or anybody who's played a paladin before, at any level between fucking 5 and 10, the spell that you want to cast is never as good as just smiting someone.
I don't think that's true.
It's very rare based on what they give you. Based on what they give you. Because what they give you are essentially a giant list of concentration spells, which you can only do one at a time.
Sure.
And then a whole bunch of stuff that you really aren't going to use most of the time over smiting. You know what I mean? Like, if it feels really bad for me to use one thing and then get into combat and go, oh, I'm just a fighter now.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck?
I think I like it from the perspective of I like having choices with consequences.
Sure.
And so like if let's say I'm out of combat, right? And I don't even know if paladins can learn detect magic, but I don't think they're ritual casters.
Maybe one of the oaths can, but
I don't think they're ritual casters. So let's say nobody in my party can cast detect magic. It's like, well, I can either cast it and find that magic item that's hiding in the corner, but that's one less thing I can use for smite later.
True.
And even in combat, like I think they do get hold person, which is a really powerful spell in some ways. You know,
They do get hold person.
So I can I can sacrifice my entire rounds of attack to cast hold person, and it could end the combat. Or I could just attack and use that second level slot for smite.
Yes,
so I actually like those consequences.
I completely agree with that. The only problem is that hold person is so strong that you could probably say that about if any class had hold person, which most of them do that are spellcasters. That's a strong enough spell to where that's not really the stuff that I'm talking about. Like if you looked at like but it's also a concentration based spell.
It's a concentration
which is
spell.
the same thing with the concentration of all the other spells that they give you for Paladin. Like most of the spells that they're giving you are concentration. So when I'm picking through them, I'm just like, I want to do this one thing and this thing, and then I'll want to smite the rest. I don't give a fuck about the rest.
Most of the good spells in the game are concentration spells. That's just that's the
true.
burden of spellcasting.
That's true.
And because you're Paladin, you probably don't have crazy charisma. Mm-hmm. So you know your spellcasting, your DC is probably you might only have a +2 or +3 in charisma. So hold person is a little bit sketchy.
True.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. As you get stronger, 5th level, because you're a martial, you get a second attack.
Yeah. So again, you're just as good as a fighter as a fighter.
Just as good as a fighter Yep.
Except you don't get action surge.
Yep.
Who cares?
Yep. Whatever.
So yeah, just as skilled as a fighter.
Yeah, I guess. 6th level, you get Aura of Protection, which is great. This is a really cool thing.
This is the one that what is it? Grinds my gears.
Yeah, sure.
Why?
Well, why do you get the Aura of Protection? Yeah, it's a great mechanically, it's great, but also I don't know why you get it. It just doesn't make sense.
Here's the thing. People that are like really into optimizing and do like tons of multi-classing, right? Mm-hmm. You always see like 1 and 2 level dips of every class. Paladin is the only class where you regularly see multi-class builds with 6 levels of one thing and then a bunch of another. People go all the way to level 6 Paladin because Aura of Protection is insane. And flavor-wise, I don't get it. Like, okay, I'm swearing an oath of vengeance, right? But if you're within 10 feet of me, you can dodge fireballs better and avoid, charm spells better. Like, it's just so generally good, and I don't get it, and it makes me mad that Paladins have these auras because Bards should have them.
Yeah, I totally agree.
To me, this is what Bard songs should be, and I don't. If you just took this away from Paladins, they'd still be really good. Yeah, and this feature is insane.
This feature's nuts.
Yeah.
I do want to answer fandom real quick because we're probably actually just gonna wrap it up.
Yeah. And actually, getting to level 6, that's a fine place to wrap up Paladins.
I think it's totally fine. The rest of it's whatever.
Yeah.
So fandom asked. Speaking of, I think they were talking about barbarians and sort of comparing certain things in the chat with paladins. But fandom asked, speaking of barbarians, is Divine Smite not a spell? Could a barbarian paladin multiclass smite while they were raging? So here's the thing. I don't believe Divine Smite is necessarily considered a spell because you have to.
It's not a spell.
It's not a spell. It uses a spell slot, but it is not a spell. So technically, you should be able to smite while you're raging. And to further support that, there's a subclass of the barbarian that is, I believe, Path of the Zealot, which essentially is a barbarian paladin.
Does get like some smites?
Yeah, you get smites essentially.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Paladin, as we were talking through it. I was like, damn, I wonder if there's like a pretty dope like Paladin 6 barbarian, or just like Barbarian 2 to get rages and a reckless attack, and then Paladin whatever. You know what
might really tickle your fancy? If I don't remember what episode it is, it's one of the further back. It's one of the like 100 episodes of Campaign 1. When Joe Manganiello guests, his character Archon the Cruel is a red dragonborn, 14 paladin, 2 or 3 barbarian.
Okay,
and it's dope as fuck.
Yeah,
he walks in there and is a marauding force.
Well, because plus
so cool.
You don't need more than 2 or 3 if you really want to subclass levels of barbarian in a paladin build, because paladins also get extra attack.
Yep.
So yeah, I think if it were me, I would be bored playing 20 levels of barbarian.
Sure.
So if it were me and I was like, hey, I'm going to play a barbarian, I would 100% after level 2 or 3 be like, I wonder if I should become a paladin.
I wonder if I should just be a paladin.
I wonder if I should just swear a fucking oath to, conquest or whatever.
Word.
And I think that would be super flavorful too, to be honest.
Totally agree.
I like that idea a lot.
Oh yeah.
Virts, think about it since you're playing a paladin.
Yeah, Virts, that's
level
actually
6 and then pick up a couple levels of barbarian.
Totally agree. All right, y'all. Well, we're gonna wrap it up now. I gotta get a move on, unfortunately. But thank you for joining us, everybody. If you caught this on YouTube, come check us out on Twitch. We're here at a Little Dicey D&D. Like I said, we go live Saturdays for the podcast, this show, at noon Eastern Standard Time on, like I said, on Saturdays, and then on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at a Little Dicey D&D on Twitch. We play a live game of Dungeons and Dragons that we've been playing for the past 30 plus weeks, which is it's been a lot of fun. So check us out, and we will
Should we take 20 seconds and ask you, are you changing your rating? We didn't actually give a rating.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You started with a C, right?
C. I started with a C plus.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if we were to rank all of the C's eventually, all in order, I would probably I'm keeping the Paladin there. I think C's fine for it. Mechanically, very powerful, super fun to beat the shit out of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, like there's so much of this class where I'm just like, why? And but what about this? Like, shouldn't they do that? Like, what if you did this instead? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when you're asking too many of those questions, you can't. I don't know. To me, it's just like the power of the class can't save you. You know what I mean? That much. So.
I think a lot of things are fixable, but raw, I think, in combination with the things that are actually written well, but people don't do, which I'm not going to hold against it too much.
Sure.
But I think I think a C.
I think C is fine.
Yeah,
for sure.
And also, they fucking wreck everybody.
They also wreck face.
So play a Paladin. Go for it.
Do it. Please do.
And make us proud.
Yeah. I believe in you.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We can send it over to the end screen, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm going to actually try to click
I believe in you.
I'm going to click the right button. Wait, everybody watch.
You can do it, everybody.
All right.
Matt's got it. Yep. That's fine. That's fine.
And then I click this one.
There he goes. Attaboy.